You are clear to enter. Welcome to Pizza Planet.
Welcome to Pizza Planet,
a Pixar podcast.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Gareth.
And we're your delivery guys.
Bringing you a square box of round, hot, cheesy Pixar goodness.
We've got a bounty of slices in today's feast, so let's dig in.
All right, people, please put your palms together for the premiere podcast where a pair of Pixar patron pals pontificate the proficient performances by the peerless professionals at the praiseworthy producer of picturesque and perfectly poignant plots. Now posit your pizza pie preferences because you've been permitted passage to Pizza Planet. Apologies to my pop filter for the poetry of profuse peas.
Wow. Say it was a tongue twister would be an understatement, but that was incredible. Wow, I was not prepared for that.
You're welcome.
Nicely done. And you didn't break a beat either.
Thank you.
That's unbelievable. How many times did you practice that in the bathroom mirror?
That is the first time I've ever said it out loud.
Oh, well done. Well, welcome to Pizza Planet. Today, we're going to be talking about the film
Monsters, Inc.
Monsters, Inc. Yeah. So this is a part of our film breakdown series where we break down for you.
Breakdown. You ready for some stats, Ben?
Give me some stats, man.
All right. Well, this movie was directed by Pete Docter, who we all know as the director of Up, Inside Out, and Soul. This movie also had two co-directors. A lot of people forget a lot of these early Pixar movies had co-directors, kind of like, you know, people under the wings of the main director, I guess. At least that's how I interpret it. But Lee Unkrich was a co-director, so he was the director on Toy Story 3 and Coco, but he also co-directed Toy Story 2 and Finding Nemo. So a lot of Pixar experience with Lee Unkrich. The other co-director was David Silverman, who went on to work on a lot of The Simpsons, including he directed the Simpsons movie.
Oh, cool.
This movie's cast includes John Goodman, Billy Crystal, Steve Buscemi, Jennifer Tilly, Frank Oz, and Bob Peterson. Bob Peterson, you'll recognize that name, hopefully, Ben, because he was the co-director of Up, where he voiced Doug, and he also voiced Mr. Ray in Finding Nemo. But in this movie, he's Roz.
Oh, nice.
And then R.I.P. James Coburn, who voiced Waternoose in this movie. I think he actually passed away before the movie came out. I don't remember. I remember his name coming up in the news around this time. It was either shortly after the movie came out or just before it was released. But yeah, he sadly passed away. This movie was released November 2nd, 2001. It's the 10th highest grossing Pixar film. It had an opening weekend of $62 million at the box office. The domestic box office was $255 million, adding up to a worldwide box office of $528 million. The budget for this movie is really interesting because it was $115 million. And now that might not mean anything to you, Ben, but that actually means it's the most expensive Pixar film that was made up until 2007 when Ratatouille was made. Ratatouille was made for $150 million. This is $115 million.
Okay.
But before Ratatouille, all of Pixar's movies were less than $95 million. So what about Monsters, Inc. was so expensive is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, interesting.
So as far as Rotten Tomatoes goes, this is ranked at number 11 out of all 25 Pixar films. It's got a 96% fresh rating with 198 reviews.
Okay. Fresh.
Some quick fun facts for you, Ben. I'm sure you knew this, but Billy Crystal, who voices Mike Wazowski in this movie, he was originally offered the role of Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story, like the first Toy Story, and he turned it down. But famously, it's rumored that he's regarded that as one of his biggest career mistakes. Basically, the rumor of his regret found its way back to Pixar. So the story goes that like Pixar called him when they were like developing Monsters, Inc. and his wife picked up the phone and she's like, "Hey, Billy, like Pixar wants to talk to you." And he says, tell them yes, I'll do it. So he basically took the role of Mike Wazowski before he even knew what the project was.
I think you had this was a cut portion of the Toy Story episode, but like you did a reenactment of him picking up the phone.
Oh yeah,
like just saying yes before he hears anything.
Yes. So then, fun fact number 2. This is my last fun fact for you. Frank Oz, who voices Fungus in this movie. If you don't know that name, I am sorry, but you should know that name because he is best known for voicing puppet characters like Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, Animal, countless other Muppets, but also Grover, Cookie Monster, and Bert, and other Sesame Street characters. Probably most famously, he was Yoda in all 7 of Yoda's big screen appearances. But if that's not impressive enough, this man, Frank Oz, is also an accomplished director, starting his career of directing by co-directing The Dark Crystal with Jim Henson, and then going on to direct comedy classics like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, What About Bob, and Bowfinger, among others. So I like ever since I was a kid, I was always fascinated that Frank Oz was in this movie because I was like, I knew who Frank Oz was, and I was like, he's such a big deal, but he has such a small role, and yeah that always just blew my mind. So.
Because who's that character again?
Fungus is the assistant to Randall, like the guy with 3 eyes, the red monster with 3 eyes and glasses.
Frank Oz, wow.
With that being said, let's jump into the movie Monsters, Inc.
Let's do it.
So the opening main titles are 2D animated, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
I love the art style and gives you a really good preview of Randy Newman's score. I'll make a bold statement here right at the top of the pod.
Okay.
I think this might be Randy Newman's best score.
Yeah. No, for real. It totally could be. It's so good.
Because, I mean, he did this and all the Toy Story movies and Bug's Life. I think... Oh, and maybe... Did he do Cars?
Did he only do 3 films? Or I guess it's more because there are 2.
Yeah, there's 4 Toy Story movies.
Yeah.
Bug's Life, Monsters, Inc.
Yeah.
Anyways... I think, certainly going against Toy Stories, all 4 Toy Stories and Bug's Life, I personally prefer this score.
Dude, yeah, no, it's so good, and you got this like jazzy little song at the beginning, which kind of comes full circle as we'll get to later on at the end of the movie, but yeah, there's just some touching moments with the score too that I really feel like are like breaking some new ground for Pixar. I feel like this score really pushed Pixar into, I don't know, kind of what it is now. Like there's some really touching parts with the way that the score goes throughout the film that's like very surprising.
Yeah.
So yeah, Randy Newman really killed it.
Yeah, and so going into the first scene, do you want to give us a quick breakdown of our introduction to this world?
Well, we have, so right after the title sequence, we had this like opening scene where we see this child sleeping, and we see, it's dark and the moonlight's coming in through the window, and we see this like breeze. It's like moving the shades. It's kind of eerie feeling, and then the kid like thinks that like there's something in the closet. And he thinks he sees something like a arm of a alien looking monster, but then it's just like an article of clothing, and then he tries to go back to sleep, and then the monster comes over and then hovers over the child, this really terrifying silhouette, and then all of a sudden it's a twist, and then it's like we see that it's like a monster who's like training in practice for learning how to be a monster, and like there's like set pieces and everything.
It's a simulation.
Yeah, and there's just a robotic child.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like these aspiring scares as we will learn about, and they're taking notes, and yeah, this is a hilarious opening gag.
Yeah, so the introduction to this world is super engaging because you have so many questions initially, and then as you're starting to like realize, oh, this is a simulation. Oh, they use child screams for power. Oh, like they think kids are dangerous. Like there's just so many things that are just setting up this world. We talked about world building in our last podcast episode. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the theatrical shorts, and like I think that Pixar is just fantastic with world building, and this is one of their this might be their magnum opus with like creating a completely original live-inable world.
Dude, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I really do think it's like one of the best for world building. Mm-hmm. Like you said, there's so many questions, and it's so genius. Like there's so much to it. So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to point out one small thing I noticed in this scene that I'm not going to count it as an Easter egg because I know that it was not intentional, but there is, and I know it's not intentional because Monsters University doesn't come out for like 12 years later, I think, is when Monsters University came out. Mm-hmm. So I know they weren't planning that movie, but nonetheless, in the bedroom sequence, the simulation, the robotic kid at the head of his bed, there's like a cap hanging, like a hat.
Yeah.
And it's colored like yellow and green, exactly like the Uzma Kappa hats that they wear in Monsters University.
Oh,
so I was like,
interesting.
I don't know if like maybe someone doing art for Monsters University saw that hat and was like, oh, well, maybe we can tie that in with Monsters University. But either way, like I noticed that hat and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
That's cool. Yeah. Speaking of the room, I got a lot of like Toy Story vibes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just a child in his bedroom, and just the way that the child, you know, looks is kind of reminiscent.
I mean, and I'm pretty sure there's even a toy chest that says toys on it very like prominently on the front.
Yeah, totally.
So then Mr. Waternoose comes out and he's like the head of the company, and he's kind of like he's providing the necessary exposition for the scene, or for I guess what this company is and what they do. They are the, I guess, premier provider of power for this world, for this city of Monstropolis, and they are harvesting that power using children's screams. So they're sending in monsters through these essentially portals into the human world that go directly into children's bedrooms at night. So, yeah, fascinating concept. But then we cut to meet our heroes. So, Mike and Sully. I will say this introduction to Mike is amazing because he's doing like a radio voice. And he's like off screen initially. So you don't even recognize that it's him. Like every time, I feel like this scene got me every time I watched it as a kid, because I would not be able to recognize Billy Crystal's voice as a kid. So I'd hear the radio voice and think, oh, yeah, that's a radio. And then it would zoom out and I'm like, oh, that's Mike talking.
He does a spot-on radio voice. Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see quickly, I mean, it doesn't take long at all to realize that the chemistry between Mike and Sully, between, you know, John Goodman and Billy Crystal, is just gold. Yeah.
They have one of the quintessential Pixar buddy relationships. Like everyone thinks of Buzz and Woody when they think about the Pixar pals, the pairs that go together. For me, Mike and Sully are borderline more quintessential than Buzz and Woody.
Oh, snap. We'll come back to that.
Okay, yeah, we'll come back to that later. But yeah, no, I agree. They have amazing chemistry.
Yeah, just the little scare practices and, you know, this is scary beat.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Oh, geez. It gives me Monster 2 vibes, too, like when they're training together.
Yeah, when he's like, twins in a bunk bed, and he's going like, like up and down, like...
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, the training sequence is really fun. There is also a commercial that airs in this scene. We see a little bit more exposition about, you know, Monsters Inc. and what they do. Mm. And I was going to point out there's a brief clip in that commercial that shows a monster with a VR headset on.
Yeah, I caught that.
And I was like, seriously, what is it with Pixar and VR? Because remember in Toy Story, they had the gag virtual reality.
Oh, dude.
And I had made the comment in our in our Toy Story episode that I didn't think VR was that prominent of a notion back in the 90s, that it would be like a gag that people would get, you know?
For real.
In 2001, they're doing the same gag. So I'm just like, what is with Pixar and virtual reality?
Yeah, that's a connection I didn't see coming. And yeah, 20 years, you know, ago, they were doing these VR gags. So that's just crazy.
Yeah. And then Mike sees himself in the commercial, and he's covered by the logo. And this is the first occurrence of this gag. And I'm going to try and keep a tally of how many times we see this gag throughout the movie of like Mike getting covered by a logo or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's just completely oblivious to it. He's just like, I was in a commercial.
Yeah. I can't believe it.
I also wanted to point out the chairs are really cool because Sully has, like, they're both custom fit for both characters. So another interesting world building thing, like all of the monsters come in such unique shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of cool to see like Sully's got a chair with a tail hole in it, and Mike has like a sphere, like an inverted sphere shaped seat that he fits perfectly into. So
yeah, the way that just like Sully picks him up and like crane drops him onto
yeah.
the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they walk to work.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a bunch of different visual gags we see in this scene, like seeing different kinds of monsters. Like there's one that like sneezes on his newspaper, but his sneezes are fire, so he like burns up his newspaper, and he goes, "Oh, nuts!"
And then the guy who's like the Jello who like falls through the sewer, or not sewer, but like some sort of grate in the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm assuming Mike's car must be electric because Sully cites like a scream shortage as the reason that they're walking to work, or I don't know, like maybe there's other.
Interesting. I was thinking Sully just wanted to like get it more workout in, and that's why they walked.
No, he specifically said it's because there's a scream shortage.
But yeah, what did I want to? I just because I know like you are a big sucker for just like world building and fantastical character designs and stuff. I know how much you like an Onward. Mm-hmm. So with Monsters Inc., especially in this scene, we see all of these interesting character designs. What are your thoughts on the character designs in Monsters Inc.?
Like I said earlier, they're just so diverse, and that's what I love about it. Is it's like you can make a monster in pretty much any shape or size, and they fit into this society. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the cool things about I think this world is that it paints a picture of diversity that is genuinely no two people are alike, and that's like a really cool notion. Is like pick any color, pick any like number of eyeballs, pick any body shape, pick any kind of like weird appendage. Like there's the guy who sneezes on his newspaper. I'm pretty sure he had like a rhino horn or something like that. There's people with like tentacles. There's people with little fins for ears. And it's a visual feast, but it's also a reminder that this is what society that is like embrace diversity kind of looks like.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, this had to have been such a treat for character design people at Pixar. Like, geez, there's just like freedom there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they walk to Monsters Inc., and then this is where we see the second instance of Mike's like getting covered by something gag, because we see the wall where it's got the Screamer of the Month pictures, and like every month for like I think like a year it's all Sully, but you can see Mike just barely out of frame in each shot, so it's like he probably thinks that he's in these photos, but he's not.
Dude, that's I'm so glad you brought this up, because I didn't make the gag for that time. I got the TV gag and then like another later one. Yeah. But that one, and now I'm thinking like, okay, like why are they doing this gag besides it being so funny? And I think it's like really planting this seed of like these characters and their what do you call it when characters have like not values, but like their
personalities, or like what they want, their desires. Like desires Mike really wants to be seen.
Yes, exactly. Mike wants to be seen, and
that's foreshadowing.
Yeah, that's good writing. It's really good writing.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I didn't even think about the foreshadowing implications of that. So that's a really good point. So then we meet Celia. That's Mike's girlfriend. Schmoopsy Poo. Yeah, and Googly Bear. Like, I love their pet names for each other, but then there's one of my favorite exchange. I'm going to say this a lot, so just warning. A lot of what I have to say about this movie are just quotes, because there's so many quotable lines. But
I know.
this exchange right here, when Celia goes, "Hi, Sully Wally," and then and then Sully goes, "Hey, Celia Willia."
So good.
But yeah, like I feel like I've been that person where it's like, somebody uses like a fun nickname for you. Maybe not like that like cutesy, but like then you want to like say something back at them, so you come up with something really stupid.
So good.
So then we meet. I think is the next scene where we meet Roz or Randall. I think one of them is met next. So basically, we meet Roz and Randall. Those are two characters that become important later on. And Roz is reading a newspaper with the headline "Baby born with 5 heads, parents thrilled."
Yeah, those headlines are so good in the movie.
Yeah, and this scene also has another one of those great like monster gags, like talking about the diversity of monsters. There's a slug monster who's mopping. Like presumably what looks like, a puddle of some kind of something left behind by a monster, and then he slithers away and leaves a slime trail, and you realize that what he was mopping up was his own slime trail.
Yeah. That's some job security.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think then we go to the scare floor.
Yeah, the scare floor.
So let me know if I'm moving too fast.
No, you're good. I just was thinking like, wow, this is the first time that we see the floor. No, we saw a little bit in the video, maybe so far.
Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I think this is the main unveiling of the scare floor.
Cool. So this is really where we see, if I'm not mistaken, this is really where we see the monsters like. This is their day job. They're going into work. We see it fully in action. We see them capturing the screams. We see the tally numbers. Yeah, which I guess is just a fun game in house. I guess. Yeah. For the employees.
Well, it probably also might be for like pay. Like I don't know if they make commission.
Oh,
maybe.
Okay. Yeah, like sales numbers.
Yeah, like that, or it could also be like. You get more leverage with the company for raises when you're in a certain bracket. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a really good world building too, because you're like, this scene, it just screams to me. It just like.
It screams to you?
Good one there. It's just totally like interesting, original concept heavy.
Yeah.
Because as we've said, we've got monsters in the closet are like the main characters. And their day jobs are just coming into kids' rooms and scaring them. But not only that, but as you said, we see these doors, flying in, and they're like these portals to other places, and so you're just like, man, like what's going on here? There's also a playful side of like the. We see, I guess that's later where we see the monsters are like afraid of kids. Which I guess we'll get to that. But there's just so much interesting concepts here in the scare floor.
Yeah. One thing I was going to point out is like this whole ritual of the monsters like hyping themselves up before they start the day. I remember like I was so into that as a kid. I was like, yeah, this is so cool. But now I'm like, this is really impractical. Like, why are they wasting all this time? Like, I don't know. Maybe they're not wasting time. Maybe it's just like a couple seconds, but they're showing a montage of it, so it just lasts longer. But yeah, now I'm like, this is like an impractical use of time. Like when Fungus is like pulling the different backdrops down so that Randall can like change his skin and like, I don't know, practice camouflaging himself. Like, I'm not sure that's a good use of time.
Yeah, it is interesting, like the whole pairing, because really they're just about getting the screams from the kids. Yeah, but these scares, like they need the right hand man to maybe do more of the organizational work or like prepping the doors. But it's just interesting how they also sort of this hype man kind of like, you got this, bro, you got this. Yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah, and so you brought up earlier the fact that the monsters have a fear of children, and our first like main introduction to that concept in this scene, one of the monsters comes running out of a room like crying, and telling his partner what happened about how like the kid almost touched him.
Oh yeah.
And this is another quotable line. I could have been dead. I could have died. He's just like overreacting, like dramatizing the whole situation. But then we see how serious kids are here in this next bit, where this one scarer named George comes strolling out of his door, and his partner is like talking to one of the other guys, and he's like, yeah, George and I are like brothers. And then he turns and sees the sock on George's back, and he goes, 2319, and it's just like, oh, instant 180. And I love that moment because it's like, are you really like brothers? I feel like you would have handled that with more maybe finesse if you genuinely cared about George.
Poor George. Yeah, it's that I've seen that clip on YouTube so many times. Just that one scene of the 2319.
Yeah,
and then it turns into like documentary filmmaking mode. Did you notice that, where like the camera goes handheld?
Oh,
and
no!
It's like running. Whoever that guy is, who's George's partner.
Yeah.
There's like running towards the button to hit the 2319, and it's just like chaotic.
Yeah. No, I think it wasn't George's partner who hit the button.
Oh.
It was like the floor supervisor who's a different character.
Okay.
But yeah. I know what you mean. So then the CDA, the Child Detection Agency, like comes like basically rappelling from the ceiling.
Like,
it's so fast.
I know. Then like at one point there's like a zoom out, and it's just like all these helicopters like around. It's like, how did they get here this fast?
It's like
geez.
comical overkill. Like, this is what's great about Monsters Inc. is that it embraces the like exaggerative moments and still uses them for the story. Like, this is still all part of the world building, but it's still funny. Like, it's such a great balance. And the scene where they are like trying to destroy the sock, they put it under like this dome with some sort of like detonator or something. I don't know. And like the music is like, the score is like building, and it's like sounding like there's gonna be like something really loud sound or something like that, and then it just kind of goes poof.
And they're like zzz, oh, nope, nothing to see here.
That scene always made me laugh as a kid, because I was just like, it's so anticlimactic.
I know that this has got to be like one of the funniest Pixar films. It's just so, I was not prepared to laugh so much in this movie. So good.
I think in this scene is also when Sully has a talk with Waternoose, and little quote, Waternoose says, "I would do anything to keep it," as in this company, "from going under." And I just want to point out that Mr. Waternoose would indeed do anything.
Yeah, that's a good foreshadowing.
Yeah.
But you got it. I felt he was very likable early on in the film.
Well, it's because it's the actor who plays him. James Coburn is a really likable guy. Like, I think his voice is very soothing to listen to. He's a very like charismatic dude. So
yeah, he just seems like a really good boss. He just like been through the ropes and cares about the employees, and yeah. I think then we kind of skip some time, and the movie takes us to the end of the day. And I just wanted to point out, I noticed in a shot during this scene, in the background of the scare floor, you see like these little office cubicles or whatever, and one of the desks has a desk chair that has like 10 or more wheels on it. Like, it's just like they're taking the design of like, hey, like, let's give monsters like extra appendages, and they're applying it to furniture. Oh, nice. I didn't catch that. That's funny.
So, and then in this scene, I was also going to point out, we see Sully's fur in the evening light, and I feel like this is one of those moments where it dates the animation just a little bit, because I think in certain lights, Sully's fur, it looks CGI. Like, it looks a little bit fake. And I think that the evening light that is coming in through the windows in this scene is just a little bit telling of the year this came out.
Dates a little bit. Well, granted, it is all CGI technically.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
but I speaking of his hair, this may be common knowledge for y'all in the Pixar community, but I believe this film, particularly with Sully's hair, was one of the most difficult things to animate.
I wonder if that's why it was so expensive.
Yeah, I've heard some things about it that it was just like one of those things that, like we talked about in Toy Story, where the Pixar team really believed in just like dreaming big and like we'll figure out the animation later. And this must have been one of those situations where they came up with the character design of Sully being this furry monster, and then when they're animated, they're like, well, this is our main character. He's in like so many shots, and then the rubber meets the road. But I have to say that it looks really good.
Oh yeah, like in most scenes, it looks fantastic, and like it's really only this scene and maybe one other scene where I'm like that's noticeably fake.
Yeah,
but it's still absolutely groundbreaking for the time it came out. Because again, this is 2001.
Yeah.
And so the only other company that was doing CGI movies like this at that time was DreamWorks, and they had just come out with their first one, Shrek.
Yeah.
Which we might talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, that one doesn't have anything near as complex as Sully's character design.
Yeah, and this is the fourth Pixar film, right? And come out. So you've got Toy Story, you've got Bug's Life, Toy Story 2. So we're talking toys, bugs, and granted that's still a huge leap. But now we're talking Monster World. So just hats off, man, to the animation here.
Yeah, and I really want to know what in the technology changed in the next 3 years that this movie, like I said, cost like $115 million to make. And then Incredibles, which came out in 2004, had a lot of hair elements.
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing behind the scenes stuff about how complicated Violet's hair was, especially. Mm-hmm. And so but that movie was made for less than $95 million. So did something change in the technology that made that more practical, or was it just because Sully was covered from head to toe in fur?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know the answer to that. I just think it's interesting to consider. Yeah. So, yeah, where were we?
We're at the end of the day.
End of the day. So, yeah, Mike has some very specific instructions for Sully when he realizes he forgot to file his paperwork.
Oh, yes.
I love that he uses these random colors that nobody's ever heard of. We know pink. He says pink, but then he also mentions fuchsia papers, goldenrod papers, and puce papers. And I'm like, I don't know what any of these colors are.
Yeah. My wife probably does, because we give it a hard time how she knows all the colors, these fancy colors, and I'm just like, blue, green, red.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, and so Sully, he goes back and finds a door. The floor, the scare floor is completely empty, and then there's just a lone door by itself, activated too. I think the light is on, so that means that the portal is active, and so he assumes that somebody must be scaring inside, and he opens the door and calls out, and nobody answers, so he's just like, all right, weird. And then he comes out of the door, and then I think, then he hears something. He looks to the left, looks to his right, doesn't see anything, and then he looks down, and then he sees the child. Oh, yeah, because she's playing with his tail.
Yeah.
She's picking it up and dropping it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he freaks out. And
yeah. I feel like that's such a cute, very realistic thing for a kid to do is oh, look, an object, I'm going to pick it up. Oh, what happens if I drop it? Oh, it made a sound. Let me do that again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think then I'm trying to remember the exact order of events, but basically, yeah, he thinks that he's put Boo back into her room, but in the process, he gets tangled up in all these toys.
Oh, yeah.
And so then he runs to the bathroom to get rid of the toys because he thinks, okay, I left the kid in the room, but if anyone sees me with these toys, I'm going to get shaved like George.
Right.
I feel like that's why the character of George maybe existed, was to create stakes for Sully.
Yeah.
I just thought of that. I'm
fear of anything with the child touching you. And,
yeah. And so he then tries to flush them down the toilet, and then it creates this ball of soggy stuff that it clogs the toilet. And so he picks up the ball, he stuffs it into a locker, and we later learn that's George's locker. Poor George.
Poor George.
And then as he's finally in the clear, so he thinks, he turns to walk away, and we see that Boo is just latched to his back.
Yeah, and there's a comical scene where it's a wide shot and he walks out of the hallway and then
Yeah.
and then like Boo comes chasing Sully away.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, and so he finds like a Monsters Inc. branded duffel bag, and he kind of like very carefully like scoops her up in it and then zips it up. And so I don't know if we had mentioned, so the reason he had to go do Mike's paperwork in the first place is because Mike had anniversary date, I think. Was it an anniversary date?
Oh, it was her birthday.
Oh, it was her birthday. So yeah,
Schmoopsy.
he was taking Schmoopsy Poo, Celia, out for her birthday, and so that is the next scene. That we're going to Harryhausen's, which I guess is a big fancy restaurant. It's very hard to get a reservation there.
Sushi bar.
Yeah. And I just want to point out, so Harryhausen's, a lot of people know this, but Harryhausen's is obviously named after Ray Harryhausen, who is a real-life historic stop-motion animator who created monsters for films such as Clash of the Titans and the old Sinbad movies. But this is something I just noticed today, is that one of the Clash of the Titans monsters that he famously animated was Medusa, which is the character that inspired Celia's hair. So like the snake hair. So I'm wondering if that was the whole thought process, is that this is Celia's favorite restaurant because it's Harryhausen's. So
Interesting. That's cool.
how does Boo get out? This scene kind of happens in a quick flash.
Yeah, so Mike is with Celia and they're sitting down for their date, and then it's a really funny line where Mike says to Celia, like, I remember the first time that something about looking into her eyes, and like he says, like, do you know who the most beautiful like face is in the whole world?
Oh,
and
yeah.
she's like, who? And he's like, Sully.
Yeah. I think he said, I remember the first time I laid eye on you.
Yeah.
And then he's like, do you know what I said? I said, Sully?
Yeah, and then Sully, like, so then she gets like, this is like a common like a joke with her, is she gets like quickly, she gets mad like very quickly and fast. He has to do anything, and like the snakes start hissing. He does like one wrong thing, but yeah. So then Sully like barges in and then like grabs the Chinese or the menu, and then is trying to tell her about or tell him about the about Randall and the door, and then about like the bag, the egg, what does he say in like pig Latin? Like,
oh yeah, this is actually the movie that taught me pig Latin. Like when he says "ugle in the ag bag."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think before this I didn't really have a comprehension of pig Latin, but this is the movie that unlocked it for me.
Thank you, Monsters Inc.
But yeah, then Boo gets loose somehow, and there's chaos.
Yes, yeah. Then there's like news people, and then doesn't the CDA come out?
I don't know if they show up right away, but I know that like, oh yeah, maybe they do, because there's that big like dome, the big laser dome.
Yeah,
like they're running away from the restaurant, and Celia's like, poor Celia, she's like left behind, going like, Mike, what's going on? Like googly bear.
Yeah.
And
on her birthday.
yeah, on her birthday. Like seriously, like Mike is not the best boyfriend.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I'm sorry. I'm a big Celia defender in this movie, and so I more on that later. But yeah, they're running away, and then they see this giant dome, just like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like a laser dome.
Yeah.
That it just encompasses the restaurant, and so they're just like in awe, like what just happened.
Yeah. And then they get back to the apartment.
Yes.
With Boo, right?
Yes. So it's at this point in the movie, I need to ask you a question. Are you ready to have your mind blown?
Give it to me.
Okay. What if I told you that you've actually met an actor that is in this scene?
In real life?
Yeah, you've met this person in real life. So the scene where the news anchor, like it cuts away from the big laser dome to their TV back at their apartment, and you see this news anchor reporting on the scene.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's a yellow monster, and he says, "If witnesses are to be believed, there has been a child security breach for the first time in monster history." That was Roger Bumpass.
Oh, the voice of Squidward.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, we met him at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And as soon as I saw that in the credits, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I had no idea that Roger Bumpass was in this movie, and then I like found out which scene he was in, and I rewatched it, and you can hear it. It's totally Squidward. Not as nasally as Squidward. Obviously, he's doing the voice like way more exaggerated whenever he does Squidward, but you can hear it if you're watching the movie, knowing that's Roger Bumpass.
Yeah.
You can't watch that scene without hearing Squidward.
Oh my gosh, I gotta go check that out now.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I was like, I'm gonna blow Ben's mind.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was like, well, it's just Mike, Sully, and Boo in that scene.
Yeah.
But then I forgot about the yeah. It's like is that when it does like the alien spotters scene?
Yeah, like there's the one guy who's like, "I tried to run from it, but it picked me up with its mind powers and shook me like a dog."
And I was like, yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, that's another just genius gag. It's Monsters Inc. totally embracing their humor, and it's so funny because it's like, I mean, this whole movie is so relatable. Like, as you know, as kids, like, you know, maybe you remember being afraid of something in your closet or underneath your bed, but also like, you know, growing up, you know, you hear about people who have seen aliens, and you hear about their tall tales, and so they're basically just like piggybacking off of that trope of like they see aliens and they just spouting off all these crazy stuff, and now they're just adopting it into the monster world. And then now I wrote a note here that like was so interesting writing that like, you know, Boo is the alien in the film.
Yeah.
Boo, this human child, she's the alien. She's the, like, we don't know, like, it may try to kill us all. We don't know its intent.
Yeah, and I think that this is going to play big into, I'll talk a little bit about that in kind of like my takeaways when we go through the claw and stuff, but I love that theme of the idea that we as an audience, we know that Boo is safe.
Yeah.
But you also have to choose to empathize. Like, if you're going to follow the rules of this world, you have to see it the monster's way, where they're like, they don't know that she's safe. Yeah. They've just been told their entire lives that children are dangerous. And so it's very, very compelling because you know it's wrong, but you also empathize with the characters.
Right. Yeah.
They have Boo back at the apartment now, and they're trying to figure out how to like babysit her, like what to do with her. She takes Mike's bear, and Mike gets all upset, and he's like, "Nobody plays with little Mikey." And I just can't help but think, like, that's really arrogant of Mike to name his own teddy bear Little Mikey.
After himself.
Yeah, I feel like that's... I don't know anyone who has done that. Maybe that's a thing, but like I would never name a toy after myself. That just seems like really strange.
Well, so my teddy bear as a child was named Benny.
Oh, really? Okay, so maybe that is a thing then.
Maybe, yeah, or we're the outliers. That's so funny.
All right, no judgment. But yeah, when Mike takes it away, she starts crying, and it's like causing this power surge. Like their lights are like surging up and down, and like what happened?
Mike makes her laugh.
Yeah, something happens. He falls into
the trash can.
Yeah,
and then the bookshelf, and then it's like his mouth like fills of books, and then I think there's another power thing, and then Mike's like. Or Sully's like, "What did you do?" And he's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Whatever you did, don't do that again."
Yeah, cool. Because this time when she starts laughing, like the power just surges completely, and it causes a citywide blackout.
Oh, that was from the laugh. So that's good foreshadowing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of where they learn that laughter also works as power, and that it might be more powerful than screams.
Yeah, and they don't make that full connection, but just a quick side note here. So I'm still confused why the monsters are afraid of the kids.
I would say that it is somewhere in monster history when it was learned that screams can power their cities. They probably had to come up with some kind of propaganda to make people on board with villainizing children. Because nobody wants to make a child scream unless that child is a menace, you know? So in order to villainize them, they had to make them seem dangerous and scary. And so this has always been my understanding of the situation, is that somewhere down in monster history, there were monsters who knew the truth. And they knew that they thought that they were protecting their future generations by lying to them.
See, that's really interesting, because it's really good writing, but it's also like I'm questioning the writing. So the monsters, so the kids are afraid of the monsters.
Yeah.
But the monsters are afraid of the kids.
Yeah.
So that's interesting writing, obviously, like to think about, like, oh, kids or monsters, they're afraid of the kids. That's interesting writing. But now I'm wondering, well, how does that work both ways?
I mean,
You know what I mean?
Okay, so I think we're going to maybe touch on that during the claw too, because that is, I think, what is powerful about this movie. One of the things about this movie is that it portrays a very visceral look at what prejudice actually looks like in the real world. And I'll talk more about that later, but I think that that's what prejudice is it's mutual fear.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely come back to that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So after the whole laughter incident puts out the power, Mike and Sully are now trying to get Boo to like calm down or whatever. And so I just remember that this scene is adorable when Sully is trying to like shush Boo, and he's like shh, and then she goes, and it's the cutest shushing sound. Is it like so adorable?
Yeah, Boo is so cute, and like the props to the filmmakers behind this at Pixar, just like the way that they were able to capture these moments with her and just show childhood and its innocence and sweetness. Like, well done.
Yeah, talking about childish innocence, there's a scene here where Mike goes, "That thing is a killing machine," and then it cuts to Boo, and she's just dancing in a circle, going la 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 la.
And then she gets like dizzy and like falls over.
Yeah. It is so cute.
And then like I love this. I love it when like I think it's like early on in that scene of bedtime. So maybe I'm skipping ahead, but like we just see her with her mouth open, and then a piece of whatever popcorn, whatever.
I think it's like Cheerios or something.
Yeah,
being
tossed in. I just like it's just so funny because they're afraid of her, but they're like feeding her like a little animal.
Yeah. They're like
good.
tossing her food.
Yeah.
And Mike's trying to come up with a plan of like how to get rid of her, and one of his plans is to use spoons to dig a hole out of the city and into the wild. It was terrible. But yeah, then it is bedtime, and Sully uses like what looked like Fruit Loops to make like a little ET trail to the bed.
Not ET.
That like I thought was hilarious, because then he like pours a pile out on like what looks like was it a pillow or a dog bed, like something like on the floor. Because he was gonna try and have her sleep on the floor, but then she gets into the bed.
Yeah.
That whole sequence is just so great. Like the interaction between Sully and Boo, and I feel like this is a turning point for Sully, where he's slowly starting to see Boo more as a human, or not as a human, like he knows she's human, but like in the sense that he's starting to relate to her, because like he finds out in this scene that she's scared of Randall. She had drew a picture of Randall. She points at the closet, and he's like, "Oh, Randall's your monster."
Yeah,
and you start to see those glimmers of empathy building in Sully.
Yeah, it's really cool, and like you see him quickly take on this like parental role. Like he's literally putting her to bed.
Yeah.
And then she's like afraid, she's afraid of the closet, she's afraid of Randall. And then he just like it's a really funny scene where he's like, "There's nothing in there, there's no monsters in your closet." And he walks over in the closet and he's like, "Well, now there is."
Yeah.
Then he like it's so cute because then he like sits down in front of the door and is like, "I'll just like wait for you to fall asleep now." And yeah, you can see that the monster's obviously like, and he even says something. He's like, "I won't scare you. Like, I'm off the clock."
Yeah,
and
I'm off duty.
Yeah. So it's like the monsters, and at least for sure Sully, who seems like more of a respectable monster.
Yeah.
Like they for sure like they scare for a living because that's their job. They got to power the city.
They scare because they care.
They scare because they care. That's a good motto. But they still like respect the children, obviously. So it's kind of interesting. They like scare them, but they respect them, and so there's somewhat respect there. But then now we're getting this level, like you said, of Sully, where he's like seeing like, oh wow, like she has feelings. Yeah, like he's like concerned about her. So it's interesting to see that develop.
Yeah. So Boo falls asleep, and this is one of the cutest little things where she just like laughs and then just very abruptly like passes out.
Yeah. Poof.
I always thought that was funny as a kid. But yeah, the next morning they have to take her to work. So they make a costume for her out of fabric from Sully's chair.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think it's worth noting here, too, that like we also have like it kind of reminded me of like SpongeBob when SpongeBob and Patrick are taking care of the clam.
Yeah. Rockabye Bye Bow.
Yeah, yeah, I love how you know the title. And there you've got like one parent who's like kind of cares, and the other one who's like kind of not. And like we're seeing that with Mike too. Like Mike is just like so upset, like especially in that scene, like when she's going to bed and he's thinking of all the plans. Like he's like freaking out. And I don't remember. There's one moment where he like literally like yells at Sully. And he's just not having it. And then, so it's funny, you have this little bit of this family dynamic. Like
yeah, mom and dad are fighting kind of thing.
Mom and dad are fighting. But anyways, yeah, so they're on their way now to sneaking Boo in the duffel bag. Or no, in the costume, sorry.
In the costume. Yeah, I never really noticed, you mentioned the duffel bag. I never really noticed the significance of the fact that there's a Monsters, Inc. duffel bag that was discovered at Harryhausen's. So like you see a scene where one of the CDA agents is showing it to Water News, and so it made me think like, would the CDA have been like all over Monsters Inc.'s facility that morning if it hadn't been for that bag? Like they clearly used that bag to link the child security breach to Monsters Inc. Are there other plants, like scare plants, that go into the human world within like Monstropolis's vicinity that they would have been investigating if like it hadn't been for that bag?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because she was found in the sushi bar.
Yeah.
So
for all we know, that sushi bar could be like smack dab between two different plants, and so that very easily could have been way less attention spotlighted on Monsters Inc. and it would have been way less scary for Mike and Sully going to work that morning had it not been for the discovery of that bag. I don't know.
The bag.
But yeah, this scene is also great because there's a moment where like one of the CDA guys is using what we assume is like a child detector and like when it goes off, I think they misunderstand like what's setting it off, so they tackle this random guy walking by, and then one of the last CDA agents to jump on the dog pile, he literally pile drives him, like he's got like goes like elbow first.
I know. They're so violent, it's so funny. Yeah.
And so then they find out that Boo needs a potty break. So they go. This is the part of the movie I titled "New Dad Energy," where Sully is like, "This is the men's room," and it's like I feel like that's total new dad energy. Is like, I don't know how to take care of a kid. Like, doesn't she have to go in the ladies' room? Like, she can't go in the men's room.
Yeah.
But then Boo is like singing inside the stall. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to propose a segment for this episode that we call Speaking Boo, where we try and translate her gibberish.
Oh.
So she sings a song, and I'm pretty sure it goes something like this. Are you ready?
Okay.
Setting song along, no one hears this song. They went lemon home. And then like Sully interrupts her, she screams, but then she continues the song with sail, fly, Sally K, the wind and play. And that's my interpretation of the lyrics.
Oh, interesting. I have never heard that song outside of the movie.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, like he's taken Boo potty. I think Mike runs into Randall because Randall. I just remembered this. Randall sees Mike in the background, I think, of a newspaper photo at Harryhausen's.
Yep.
So now he knows that Mike is linked to the child breach.
Right.
So he goes after Mike, and then there's the scene where Randall is like in the bathroom with Mike and Sully, and they're hiding in the stall.
Yeah.
And I remember this scene always terrified me as a kid because he's like busting down each stall door like really dramatically.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Yeah, Randall's like really terrifying. And we really see this his dark side's progressing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like they get to like the last door and then like they get interrupted. And then he even hits the door open but doesn't look. And you're like, ah! It's like really good build up tension.
Yeah. So then Mike gets a random key card to a door that he claims is Boo's door. It's not. It doesn't look anything like Boo's door, and he opens the door, and it's like yodeling music, which actually sounds super fun. But yeah, Sully's like, no way, I'm not putting her in there, because like he's starting to have, again, like he's having like, you know, a moral conscience about Boo, and like he actually cares about her. So he's not going to put her into some random door. But yeah, this is that scene with the oh so quotable line that I used to sing this all the time as a kid. Put that thing back where it came from, or so help me, or so help me, or so help me, and cut.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah. And then, like, later, like, they're, like, arguing and, like, because they make the excuse that it's like, oh, we're rehearsing a play. It's the company play. And then later, I think it's Randall walks up to them or something. Somebody walks up to them, and he's, like, saying, she's out of our hair. And he's like, oh, yeah, we're rehearsing. She's out of our hair.
And is this the part right when they're by that door where Sully says that her name is Boo?
Oh, it might be. Yeah, because he does name her at a certain point during this sequence or whatever. But yeah, I can't remember when exactly that is. But yeah, he does give her the name. And that's another example of like how, oh, he actually cares about her.
Yeah, and then Mike makes the joke like whenever you like when you adopt a pet or you, like a stray cat, and you're like, no, don't name it. Like, you'll be attached. And so
yep.
Yeah.
But he's totally attached. He's smitten. Again, like total new dad energy.
Oh yeah, dad mode.
But yeah, so then I think around this time is when Celia finally comes to confront Mike, and I have to say, like, Mike could have handled that confrontation way better. He's not great with relationship spats, so like his solution is to just like dip his girlfriend while she's yelling at him and then like kiss her without consent. And it's like, bro.
But he's romantic.
Yeah.
Duval.
Yeah, but then Randall eventually does corner Mike, and this is another great exchange where I'll see if you can remember the lines. I'll do Randall. What happens when the whistle blows in 5 minutes?
Oh, he's like, it gets painted or something?
No. He says, I get a timeout.
Oh, I get a timeout.
And then Randall says, everyone goes to lunch, which means the scare floor will be...
Oh, is that when he says painted?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, painted?
Painted, yeah.
And he's like, empty. It'll be empty, you idiot. I just love Billy Crystal's just completely oblivious delivery on those lines.
Yeah. So good.
But meanwhile, Sully is, trying to keep track of Boo, and she like wanders off and gets like, I guess, she jumps into a trash can at one point, I think, and then he gets distracted, but she gets out of the trash can and then wanders away with a group of school children. And then he sees the trash can get taken away and thrown into the trash compactor. So he thinks she's in the trash compactor.
Yeah, which is such a funny gag. And it's also like kind of heartbreaking in a way because you see the little eye sticking up from her costume. and he just like every part of the process is like he keeps on passing out, and it's like
Yeah.
it's more and more violent.
Yeah. Well, like Sully's facial reactions during the trash compactor scene are like funny, but it's also a huge character moment because it's again showing his genuine care for Boo. It's like this is legitimately devastating. Like if he didn't have those fatherly feelings for Boo, then he may not be having such like a cartoonish reaction to the whole thing. Yeah. But yeah, the CDA guy, I was going to say the CDA is a random personal note. The CDA guy who was distracting him, asking him for an autograph earlier. Yeah. And he says his daughter's name is Stephanie, I think. That's my wife's name. So, and then when the school teacher asks Boo what her name is, she goes, Mike Wazowski.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Sully totally thinks that Boo is inside this cube of garbage.
Yeah.
And he goes like, he shows Mike and he's like, I can still hear her little voice. And then they actually hear like her and then the other kids walking by.
Yeah.
And Mike goes, how many kids you got in there?
I love that line. Jeez, how many kids you got in there?
And then poor George, this is also the scene where he opens the locker with the toys from earlier and they all fall on him and it's like 2319, but now he doesn't have fur to shave off.
Do they tackle him in that scene too, or
no, I don't think so.
Someone just yells like 2319.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Poor George.
Yeah. But then Mike tells Sully, hey, like, Randall's going to hook us up with Boo's door. We got to go take her there.
Yep.
So they do. And there's this really intense sequence where Mike is trying to show Sully that everything's on the up and up. So he goes into Boo's door. Yeah. But then he gets taken. And so Sully and Boo kind of have to, like, go after him and figure out, like, where he, like, rescue him.
Yeah.
And there's this scene where they find a secret door on the wall. Like there's like one of those things on the wall with all these hanging tools, and Boo like turns one of the tools and opens the door. And I was just couldn't help but think, like, imagine if you found that at your work. Like you've worked at a place for years.
Oh yeah.
And there's just this random wall full of tools, and one of the tools opens a secret door. That would be so weird.
Yeah, and it's really creepy down there. It's like this long tunnel that goes down. It's almost like a slide. It's like this long thing, and then they get down there, and then we hear Randall and his partner
Fungus.
Yeah, Randall and Fungus plotting about the what do they call it? The scream
extractor. The scream extractor.
Scream extractor.
Yeah. Yeah, we see that Mike is now, like, strapped to this machine, and Randall says, say hello to the scream extractor. And then, like, Mike responds, hello.
Hey, it's good to be here.
But yeah, the scene was legitimately terrifying as a kid. The scene when they turn it on and it's, like, getting closer and closer to Mike is just super intense. But then it shuts down, and I have to point out that Fungus and Randall really are terrible at troubleshooting, because if the machine is unplugged, they should have just noticed the lack of power. But instead, he's like having him check the machine itself. So I don't know. Yeah. Then Randall goes back to plug it in. When he gets back, Sully's rescued Mike, and Fungus is strapped to the machine. Mm-hmm. And so this is the reason this scene is so scary, is because you see Fungus and the machine has like sapped the color out of him. Oh, yeah. And like because it's like pulling screams out of his mouth, it looks like it's like, what is the word when your flesh gets really puffy and gross?
Like his lips, you mean, when they're
swelled? Yeah. His lips get all swelled up.
Yeah.
And he can't breathe. And it's just like seeing the effect of the scream extractor makes it so scary, because it's like they were planning on using that on children. Yeah, on children. Yeah. And also it makes me feel really bad for Fungus, because we don't really know why he's helping Randall other than he's his partner. Like, why? And Randall treats him really bad too. Yeah. And then the poor guy. Like, I wish it would have been Randall, like, but it's Fungus who gets the scream extractor on him. So I definitely did feel kind of bad for him in the end there. But yeah, it's a terrifying gizmo. Yeah. But then they go to blow the whistle on Randall, so they go find Water Noose, and Water Noose wants Sully to do a scare demonstration for the new recruits.
Yes.
And this scene is really sad because Sully roars and it scares Boo. And again, this is a big character moment for Sully. But I did want to point out that Sully's roar is an achievement in sound design. That was a really cool roar.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, and it's just such a touching moment when we see Sully. He does the scream. He does the scream, and then Boo starts crying, and then she runs away, and then Sully's like, Boo, Boo, like, where'd you go? And then we see Mr. Waternoose, like, it's like, that's how it's done, guys. And then everyone starts leaving the area, the simulation area, and then it's so emotional when we see Sully, like, he's apologizing to Boo, and then he looks up at the screenshots from his roar, and he realizes, and then he sees Boo's face, and just like, it's just heart-wrenching when we see, like, she's so terrified of him, like she really sees him as a monster, and she like, he's apologizing to her, and she, like, can't even be around him. She's so petrified.
Yeah.
And for him to realize that, like, he scared her, that he's like he feels like he's like really a monster, and that he can't even, like, she won't even let him be around her in that moment.
Yeah.
It's like really terrible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And so Water Noose finds out, and then they think initially that Water Noose is on their side, but then instead he gets, like, this key card to a door that, like, it's like this metal, almost refrigerator looking door.
Yeah.
Or like freezer. It looks like a industrial freezer door. And then, yeah, he tells them that this isn't Boo's door, this is yours. And then he pushes them into the door, and then they end up in a blizzard.
it's a twist.
It's a twist. Yeah, and so Boo is left in the hands of Waternoose, and they are now banished.
So I gotta say, for, like, this twist is done really well. I haven't seen Monsters Inc. in a while, and it shocked me.
Oh, really?
I was like, well, I kind of had an idea of what was going on, but I was just like, oh, snap. Because, again, Mr. Waternoose is very likable the whole time. He doesn't really give hardly any signs at all, except for his subtle line about doing anything for the company. But that's something that we would all say about, like, our jobs, like, too. So it's like, it's really shocking. You're almost left in disbelief. You're like, whoa, like, okay, there's got to be more to this, like, for his character. Like, what's going on? He seemed like a really likable guy. So that was shocking to me as far as, like, the writing of his character. But then also, like, this door in the Himalayas.
In the Himalayas.
Like, where did this door come from? Why is there a door there? But who knows? But yeah, we're greeted quickly by the abominable snowman, and that line is just so good.
Did someone order a Ratzenberger with a snow cone?
Hey, John Ratzenberger makes an appearance. That opening line gets me every time. It's just like we're in this blizzard. We don't know where we are, and then all of a sudden this abominable snowman shows up, and it's kind of scary at first. You're like, what's going on? And then he's just like, welcome to the Himalayas.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like, was he expecting them? Like, what?
I guess maybe he can see from his cave the door, and so when he saw the light up, because the light lights up whenever it's activated.
Yeah.
So maybe he saw the light activate, and he's like, oh, friends, and so he went out to greet them. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So good.
But yeah, in this scene there is a pop culture reference that I did not get as a kid. I made this comment to someone recently talking about Turning Red, that I didn't feel like Pixar really had a lot of pop culture references in their movies. Like, that seemed like a really weird thing. In Turning Red, there's Tim Hortons on the table, the breakfast table in the scene in Turning Red when she first wakes up as a panda. Her dad's trying to, like, sneak donuts, and it's Tim Hortons Donuts, which is a real Canadian donut, and other food chain. Yeah, so that kind of surprised me in that movie, but now I'm watching this movie and I'm like, oh, this is a pop culture food reference when the abominable snowman is asked, like, are there kids in the village? And he's like, sure, they got tough kids, sissy kids who climb on rocks. And this is apparently a reference to a 1967 commercial for Armour hot dogs. So that is like a branded reference.
Oh, okay, interesting.
It's like a jingle. There's like a whole Armor Hot Dogs jingle from the 60s that has, those are the lyrics. Is
Interesting.
what kinds of kids eat Armor Hot Dogs?
Okay, I thought it was just a funny line, yeah.
No, it's actual lyrics to a branded hot dog commercial. But yeah, this whole scene is kind of the Mike and Sully breakup.
Yeah.
And I'm still a little bit fuzzy on why Mike didn't go with Sully, because I feel like they both wanted to go to the same place, but for different reasons. So it's almost like Mike didn't go with him out of a sense of like defiance of Sully's motives, which I feel like is a terrible reason to stay in the Himalayas.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that too, because like I understand their beef,
Yeah.
but like Mike is like was talking about like, you know, what about Celia, and like
I'll never see her again.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, here's your chance.
yeah. It's like, bro, you are throwing yourself the most pathetic pity party. Like, you have an opportunity to go see your girlfriend in like a couple hours. Like, you'll get there in a couple hours theoretically if this plan works out, and you're acting like you'll never see her again.
Yeah, I know. And so I was like, yeah, like so that was interesting. And also it's like he could potentially die out there, your best friend.
Yeah.
But I will say there are some really good lines that Mike says about like, he's like, you know, doesn't any of what we've done matter to you? Does like, do I matter to you?
Yeah.
And some pretty intense questions. But then you realize that like while it's valid to ask those questions, it's also kind of not fair to ask that too, because you understand where Sully's coming from and it's not personal.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting moment when you understand where both are coming from.
Yeah.
But it does like beg the question, like for Mike, like he's so concentrated on their success and like I don't know, fame in a way, and that's just really good writing, because in the beginning of the film, you know, Sully is like really focused on work, and there's even a point where they're in the locker room early on in the film, and then Sully's like, what are you doing, you know, tonight? And Mike's like said he had a date night or whatever, and then he's like, what about you? And then Sully's like, oh, I think I'll just go like work out or something like that. And like he's just like so focused on work, and so now it seems like they've switched in a way, like Sully's now seeing that like boo, like there's something like he cares about more than work and the numbers, you know. But then like, and Mike has a girlfriend, but he's still focused on like work and the numbers. So I don't know. It's just interesting how character dynamics. But.
Yeah. That is interesting. But yeah, so Sully leaves, and there's an epic sled sequence where he goes, it's like a high octane, like quick cuts, like you see him going like super fast down the mountain on this sled. And I don't think I ever noticed this as a kid, but like this scene is directed like really well, because it's like really visually exciting.
It is. Yeah, it's done really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you're really terrified too, because you're like, at any moment this guy could break it. He's going fast.
Yeah.
So,
and then he eventually does kind of wipe out, but then he looks up and there's the village.
Yeah, and you're like, wait a minute. The Abominable Snowman said it was a 3 days hike.
Yeah.
He covered some ground.
Yeah, that was like a very long sled ride. If that was a 3-day hike, then that was ridiculously fast he was going down that hill. I think it then just cuts to back at Monsters, Inc.
Yeah, he pops on the door.
Yeah, and we see this is the scene where George gets his revenge. His partner is like trying to like coax him into going into this door, and he's like, it's just nice, quiet Nepal. Well, then Sully comes out, and like I think something gets stuck to George, maybe.
Oh yeah.
And then his partner just gets out 23, and then he grabs him by the neck, and like George throws him into the door and just walks away, starts whistling.
Yeah, he's like, oh, like all right, George is finally got his moment.
But yeah, then we get this awesome sequence where Sully breaks into the secret room or whatever, and he destroys the scream extractor. He basically like bends this giant hydraulic arm and just snaps it off like it's nothing and throws it at Water News. Like that scene is so cool.
Yeah, that's dad mode, protective mode.
Yeah, it totally shows off like not only how strong and powerful Sully is, but yeah, like how the love of a proverbial father will literally be capable of moving mountains.
Yeah, no, it's so cool.
Then Mike shows up out of nowhere.
Oh yeah.
What happened to the 3-day hike?
Yeah, I thought about that too. Like, how did Mike get back so fast?
I'm pretty sure that we didn't see any other sleds or anything.
Oh, yeah.
I could be wrong. Maybe he did make a sled and he was just a few minutes behind Sully. I don't know. But Sully's much heavier, so I feel like Mike would have gotten down the hill a lot slower. Either way, like 3-day hike, man. Like how the flip did you get there so quick?
Well, he's a ball, so maybe he just kind of rolled
That'd be very painful.
A snowball and just picking up speed.
Literally. Well, then he would have like suffocated inside all that snow. How would he get out?
I don't know, man.
But yeah, so Mike starts bearing his soul to Sully while he's getting attacked by Randall, and Randall's invisible. And so Mike just randomly throws a snowball and it hits Randall, and he's like, "Oh, hey, look at that! It's Randall."
Yeah, there's some funny lines where Sully says things like, "I'm being attacked." And he's like, "No, I'm not attacking you." Mike's like, "I'm not attacking you."
Yeah.
And Sully's like, "No, I'm being attacked right now."
Yeah.
That's good.
But then they get away and they pass by Celia, and Celia, I have to say, again, I am a Celia empathizer through and through because she is so quick to understanding. Like, first she's mad, justifiably, but then as soon as she sees the, Boo and like realizes, oh, maybe Mike isn't lying to me.
Yeah.
If this is legitimately the case, then this explains everything. So she just all of a sudden everything is kind of forgiven, and so she goes to the intercom to kind of distract everyone so that everyone starts crowding around Randall. But like, dude, find yourself a woman like Celia, because she is so this entire movie she has every reason to be furious with Mike. Mm-hmm. And then in this one moment it's like, oh, okay, like I will choose to believe my ridiculous boyfriend, and I will help him gladly. Like her temperament just changes.
Yeah, she's got some zest. She's a little spicy.
Yeah.
But in the end she comes out and fights for him. And she says that Randall is like the top scare, so everyone crowds around Randall. But meanwhile, Sully and Boo are trying to get the door, and then as soon as the door is about to come down, Randall breaks through the crowd, and then that's when they jump onto the door.
Yeah. Yep. And so my next question is, why is this not a roller coaster at Disney?
Dude.
Like, why is the Disney
sweet.
parks never made a like door Monsters Inc. ride? Like I don't know how that would work, first of all, but it needs to happen, like, somehow.
Well, that's definitely a Disney World, the ride Pix Pitch. Pix Pitch.
Yeah,
I
for
like
sure.
It. Save that one for later when we do our Pixar ride ideas for Disney World.
Oh yeah, they spot Boo's door like a needle in a haystack. I feel like very early on in the sequence, they're just like, "Oh, there's Boo's door," and it's like, "What? Look at all these doors! How did you find that?"
Dude, yeah, and for sure, a needle in the haystack. And I gotta say that the wide shot when they first get in there with all the doors.
Oh,
dude. Talking 2001 here, bro. Like, this is impressive. That's probably one of the most impressive shots, I think, in the film for me visually. Like, how many doors they had to animate for this wide shot.
Right.
So impressive for its time, and it reminds me of like some of the wide shots we've seen in like newer Pixar movies, like like Coco, when we first see the Land of the Dead from a distance, and I don't know, Riley's Dream World, and like these impressive wide shots that, like, bro, who knows how long it took for them to do this in 2001, but amazing.
Yeah, all inspiring. But yeah, then they go door hopping, so we get to see some, diverse locations. They go to Hawaii, and Mike is like, why couldn't we get banished here? Then they go to Japan, then they go to Paris, which may or may not be foreshadowing for an upcoming Pixar film.
Ratatouille.
And then, actually, you know what? Hawaii would be maybe foreshadowing for lava.
Oh, could be.
Japan, I don't think they've ever done anything with Japan and Pixar. But anyways.
Because Bao was, that was still
Chinese,
yeah.
Yeah, Chinese-Canadian. Yeah. But the scene where they're falling, like they're on a door and it's falling and then it shatters. That is so freaking intense visually. Like, do you remember that scene? Like, I think that so. Randall like detaches the door they're hanging onto, and so they have to go into the door while they're airborne. And then like moments before they shut the door, or like moments after they shut the door, it like just shatters into a million pieces and is like such an intense looking scene. Like the way they do the motion blur. It's so good.
We're just like James Bond level stuff here. This is like crazy. Like they're falling down, arguably, who knows, to their death or something. Like they're falling down and they're jumping in this door before, and then once it breaks, it's gone forever. Like you can't go back now. You got to find a new door in order to get back. And so it's just like there's some high stakes here.
Then they eventually do find Boo's door, but it's not activated. And so they're like trying to get like her to laugh. I should mention they did banish Randall, but more on that later. But yeah, they find Boo's door. They're trying to get her to laugh. I just like that it's automatically assumed between both of them, well, mainly Sully, that it's Mike's responsibility to make her laugh. Because he's the one that's funny, I guess, to her. And so Mike's like trying to do some like physical humor, like self-harm. And then he's like, oh, sorry, she wasn't looking.
He's like, I got a good one here. Jumps on the beam. And then she's like,
But then the door starts moving. It takes them back to the scare floor, and Waternoose is kind of waiting for them.
So they, I believe they come back. Sully grabs the door and runs with it. Oh, because they distract. There's a distraction.
Oh, that's right. Right. Yeah.
There's a distraction. And so then
Mike,
they all go with Mike.
Yeah. Mike pretends that he's got Boo and he runs away, and the CDA chases him. So then Sully runs in the opposite direction with Boo. And then Waternoose is the only one who notices.
And he's got the door in his hand.
So this is another instance of speaking Boo, my interpretation of what Boo says. And she says something at Waternoose when he's chasing them, and it sounds like she says, "What are those?" And she's like pointing at him, like it looks like she's pointing maybe at his spider legs, and she sees his spider legs like moving really fast, and she's like, "What are those?"
So then they get into this room. I think it's the simulation area, and then Mike locks the door so that with a bar, so that way Mr. Waternoose can't get in.
Oh, yes.
And then they set the door down, and then they power on the door, and then they go into. So then Sully and Boo go into the door. He sets Boo down on the bed, and then Mr. Waternoose is right behind them.
And so then they're able to like record basically his confession of kidnapping children.
Oh, right. Yes, exactly. So I think so. Is it that? Oh, so they are actually in.
They're in the simulation room,
but they're not in Boo's room. Or no, they were in Boo's room.
No, they were not in Boo's room. He put Boo's door on the simulation room, which is not a working it's not a working door station.
I see. Yeah.
So he made it look like they were going into Boo's room, but they're actually in the simulation room.
Yes.
And then like they're able to film his confession because he didn't know that they were on camera. And then turns out that it was all planned, and Mike had led the CDA there so that they would also see the confession. So then Waternoose goes to jail.
So the big line that Waternoose has is that he would. What was the line that he would like? Kidnap thousands of kids. If that's what it took.
I would kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die.
Yeah, it's just like so messed up.
Yeah. And then, he gets dragged away, and then Roz comes out. Turns out she's the referred to as number one within the CDA.
It's another twist.
Yeah. And so she then tells Sully he has to say goodbye to Boo. And so there's just like this really, really sad goodbye scene.
Yeah.
Like at first she says bye to Mike, but then Sully actually walks into the room with her to say goodbye. And oh man, it's heartbreaking. But I was going to point out another instance of speaking Boo. She at one point is communicating, I should say, with Sully, and she points at the closet door, kind of signifying that she's no longer scared of the monsters, and she says something in gibberish that my interpretation has always been, that's their business. It sounds like she's saying that's their business. And I will have to say that this whole goodbye scene is definitely my Pixar Feels moment.
Oh yeah.
Because it is legitimately sad, like when Sully is like not just saying goodbye to Boo, but then she's not understanding that it's a goodbye. Because you see at the end of the scene, she sees him go into the closet, and then she opens the door and goes, Boo! And then she's like, Kitty? And it's like, oh my gosh, she doesn't even know that he's leaving her. It's so sad.
Yeah, because she's just a kid. Yeah. It's heart-wrenching. So Sully leaves, and then now we have like a flash forward kind of now to the laugh floor.
Yeah, and I want to point out everything up to this point in the movie has been like just 2 days. Like the entire story happens in like 2 days, which you don't think about like the motion of time as a kid when you're watching movies, but like as an adult, it's very like jarring to realize, wow, like a lot changed in 48 hours within like the monster world.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because the whole like first third of the movie was 1 day, because you have like the morning workout and then like the going to bed. So yeah, you're right. The second day.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you're right. It flashes forward, and now the scare floor is
the laugh floor. Yeah.
So yeah, and Mike is now a jokester, and we see him performing for a kid. And I have to ask, how does this not wake up parents?
Oh yeah, because he has the microphone too, and
yeah.
And
I just, as an adult, I think this is the first time I caught this. I don't know if this is intended to be subtle humor or what this is, but like Mike is explaining his joke about kindergarten, because he's like, oh, you're in kindergarten? This is the best 3 years of my life. And then he like repeats the phrase my life, like that's gonna explain the joke.
Yeah.
But like now I'm an adult and I'm like, wait a second, shouldn't he have gone like 3 years? Because that is the joke, that he took kindergarten for 3 years.
For 3 years.
It's just like he even fumbles the explanation of his own joke that's already bad. So it just makes it even funnier because of how bad the joke is, plus how terrible the explanation of the bad joke is.
Yeah. It's just like
it's like, so many layers.
It's like, yeah, screw it, and throws up the microphone and then belches, and then kid laughs. Yeah.
Yep. And then we get the third instance of the Mike gag where he's like, I'm on the cover of a magazine. Yeah. But he's covered by like, isn't it the barcode?
The barcode, yeah. Yeah, dude, it's so good too. And I was thinking about it too, is like with Mike, like it comes full circle for him now, because now he's the one going into the room.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, it's almost like the protege or whatever is now like he Sully's like supporting him and allowing him to be the one to like shine, and and so it's kind of cool for him to be able to have that spotlight. Yeah,
and you mentioned earlier like feeling bad for Fungus. This is also the scene where we see Fungus for the first time since the Scream Extractor incident, and he's now a jokester. So it's he gets his justice too.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool. And he's got his color back.
Yep. Yep. Then oh, there's another Pixar Feels moment coming up, Ben.
Yeah. My number one is coming up.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So this last scene it's so good. So it starts off with Mike comes up to Sully. No, actually, before this, so Sully's there, and he the laugh floor's going on, and you can tell he's just not quite right, and he's flipping through his notepad, and then at the very back of it, he has the picture that Boo drew of him with her, which is so touching, and then right beneath that is taped the piece of the door that of Boo's door. There's like a little piece of wood that was left from it. And
like
then
a shard.
Yeah, a little shard of wood. And you see him look at it, and he's like really missing Boo. And then Mike comes up to him, and he's like, oh, and he kind of like hides it. And then Mike's like, I want to show you something. And so then he follows Mike into this room. He has his eyes closed. And then Mike tells him to open it up. And then we see Boo's door has been reconstructed. And
piece by piece.
Yeah. And so, dude, this is just also like, it's not quite a Pixar Feels yet, but it's like, you see the door, all these shards, and you're obviously wondering like, whoa, like how did they do that? How did they recover all of it? And then there's just a point where the camera pans down to Mike's hands.
Oh my gosh. So I never really processed that as a kid, and this viewing, I almost burst into tears when I saw like Mike's hands, because he's like scarred.
Yeah.
Because of his friendship with Sully. He so badly wants to give this gift to Sully, and it's like so much sacrifice. Like, that is such a powerful moment for me.
It is so good, and I miss it too growing up. And you just see, his hands are all tattered, and it's like full circle. Like, now he's like totally supports and wants Sully to be with Boo.
Yeah.
When before, like, Boo was a nuisance, it was preventing him from them doing their thing. And now he's like going above and beyond to try to have Sully be back with Boo, whom he loves. Mm-hmm. Like, what a friend, what a guy. Yeah. And so what happens next?
So then he takes that shard that he's been holding on to, because Mike is like, it's not going to work unless it has every piece. And so he puts it in, he snaps it in, and then the door lights up. And then he turns the knob, opens the door. He looks around the corner, and we don't see what's there, but we hear off screen, "Kitty!" And then his face like lights up.
Yeah, and that's my Pixar feels. Very last moment of the film before credits, and it's, dude, man, like, it's like every time I see this movie, that moment of Sully's facial reaction.
Yeah.
Like, I can't put it into words, the joy of him seeing her again. And dude.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that there's 3 distinct Pixar feels moments, and for me it's like when Boo realizes that Sully isn't coming back, like she opens the door and she's like, "Kitty? What?" Mm-hmm. And then the scene where Mike shows his hands and is like, that's heartbreaking, but like so beautiful. And then Sully's face when he sees Boo. Because like, I've heard so many arguments from Pixar fans who are like, there needs to be a Monsters Inc. 2 where we get to see Sully reunite with Boo. And I think that defeats the purpose of what this story accomplishes, because this is about not necessarily about seeing what that reunion is. It's about the fact that reunion even took place.
Yes.
And this final moment tells us that it did happen. And so I feel like that moment lives, like the moments that follow live much more beautifully in our imagination than any movie could, or like whatever kind of sequel could possibly depict.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's just the fact that they are connected.
Yeah.
That's all we need, you know?
Yeah.
So
that is the movie, but there's more to the movie because
there's more
credits. Now I have to ask you, Ben. First of all, credits music amazing. We get the
didn't have nothing if I didn't have you, which is the number at the very beginning of the film, instrumentally.
Yeah, and that song is phenomenal. It is easily one of my favorite Pixar songs, and it's used in so many different contexts as a random rabbit hole, but like I feel like this is one of those rare songs where it can be used in the context of friendship, which it's written in the context of friendship, but I've also heard it used in the context of like romance. Like it's been used in people's weddings and stuff like that. And so it's like cool. It's a very universally applicable song. But did you watch this on Disney Plus or did you watch your DVD?
Disney Plus.
Okay. Yeah. Because there originally were bloopers in the credits.
Oh, what?
And those got removed at some point. I don't know. Disney Plus doesn't have them. But I did look this up to confirm that I wasn't crazy, because I was like, there were definitely bloopers in the credits whenever I watched this movie as a kid. And like I could remember what the bloopers were, and I was like, where the frick are they? So I looked it up. Yes, there are indeed bloopers that Disney at some point within the last 10 years removed from the credits. But yeah, that used to be a Pixar thing. I feel like newer Pixar fans, like younger people, may not remember this, but back during Toy Story 2, they started doing bloopers.
Yes.
And it was so funny.
Bugs Life too, I think, right?
Well, yeah, no, it was... Oh, yeah, did Bugs Life come out first? Silly me.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, they did it with Bugs Life first, and then they did it with Toy Story 2, and then they did it with Monsters, Inc. But I think... So I was going to bring up Shrek again. I think Shrek is what killed Pixar bloopers. Because, hear me out. So the whole joke of having bloopers in an animated movie is that these animated characters are possible of, or like capable of making flubs,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous because they're animated. Like everything is animated with intention. So it's impossible to have like animated characters have outtakes. And so that was what was so funny about it when they introduced it with Bug's Life, and they're like, oh, this is hilarious, people love this, maybe we'll make this a tradition, and future Pixar movies will just keep doing this and this will be our thing.
Yeah.
Well, then when Shrek came out the same year as Monsters Inc., they did bloopers, and it was clearly a Pixar ripoff. Like it was clearly like everyone, I remember at the time being a kid going like, okay, I see DreamWorks, but that's Pixar's thing, lay off. And then Finding Nemo came out, and there was like no bloopers, and I was like, what? No, DreamWorks, you killed the bloopers. So like, I think that Pixar, this is just my theory, that Pixar realized, oh, DreamWorks kind of killed the gag. Now that it's no longer just our thing, it's not as funny, and so they stopped doing it.
That's interesting. For me, I almost feel like it's just a new evolution of Pixar. Like Finding Nemo is a much heavier film in some ways. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the whimsical nature of Toy Story. Like Bug's Life and Monsters Inc. all kind of have that like. Well, I guess Finding Nemo has lots of humor too. It's just maybe it hits deeper. So
Yeah.
the movie just it's more of a cinematic movie.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, it was. They were going in a different direction, like trying to be a little bit more serious. But who knows?
Yeah.
Either way, there are two more things I was going to point out in the credits. One, my wife actually pointed out that there's a message at the end of the credits that says no monsters were harmed in the making of this film.
That's good.
It's amazing. And then Disney Plus is also missing the post-credits scene. If you remember, if you recall, there are certain so it wasn't in the theatrical version of the movie. I did look this up too, but the home video version, like the VHS and the original DVD, I think, had a post-credits scene which depicts the company play where like Mike is performing like the put that thing back where I came from, or So Help Me, and like all the other songs that go with it. So they're putting on the company play. But this scene, I did look it up. This scene is on Pixar's official YouTube channel, so you can check it out on YouTube for free.
Oh, okay.
So,
cool.
Anyways, but that's the movie.
Hey, Monsters Inc., y'all.
So yeah, what do you think? Is Mike or Sully the protagonist in this movie?
Whew, man. Yeah, this is similar to the Toy Story question, and I feel like we're gonna see this more probably as we dive into their movies. With when there's just multiple characters that really are contending for that. Well, oh man, because you got Mike, Sully, and you got Boo, but Boo's character is obviously a little less defined in a way because she's a child. But man, I would say that I'd say it's a buddy cop film. I could see the argument for Sully because Sully's arc is a bit more in a way than Mike's, but they both have big arcs. But I would probably side with Toy Story. I think it's buddy cop. I think it's both. But what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Sully is the Woody of this film in the sense that he's the protagonist on paper. Like he's the main character arc that happens is inside him.
Yeah.
But and the way the movie is directed and performed, it allows for both of these characters to kind of co-share that role. So yeah, like I said, I think Pixar just has this skill when it comes to their characters of making two characters equally compelling and like giving them almost near equal screen time so that it really does feel like both of their movies. But if you were to study the script from like a breakdown of the story standpoint, it really is Sully's movie. So
yeah.
I could see it both ways. But no, I agree. It should be regarded as both of their movies. But yeah, I also wanted to point out, we didn't really talk about this with Buzz and Woody, but is one of us more like Mike and the other more like Sully? Because I think I know one of us is more like Mike and one of us is more like Sully, like me and you. But I want to know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, that's a really good question. Well, I feel like you give good bear hugs, but also you have a lot of funny one-liners. So I don't know.
Well, here's my take: is yeah. I see you as the more naturally talented one, and myself as the noisy one. So like, I think I'm the Mike and you're the Sully. That's just the way I see it.
I don't know about naturally talented, because you're very talented in a lot of things.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but definitely the friendship side, yes. And yeah, for sure. And you are going to be an uncle soon, so.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're gonna have a kid, and then it'll be like our little boo. You'll be the Sully, I'll be the Mike, and that'll be the little boo.
Little boo.
Bro, I wonder if we can get that costume that Boo wears, like the little purple monster costume.
Oh,
bro,
for Halloween, that'd be so cute.
that would be amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to
The Claw.
I want to know what your takeaway was with this viewing.
Yeah, what did I get out of the film? Well, I have to start this by saying that what makes this film so great is, again, classic example of a Pixar director taking inspiration from their real life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've talked about that before. We talked about the Turning Red. We've hinted at that happening with some other films like Finding Nemo and Onward, and there's many more. But this movie, as I've heard, it was directed by Pete Docter. The story was inspired by him and his relationship with his work and a new child that was coming into his life.
Yeah.
And he was saying that the story was born out of that, like him just being like very much like a workaholic, as he said, and like working really long hours, and like to the point where he was like not being home much. And then he and his wife got pregnant, and then it was like this like wake up moment for him where he realized that like, oh my gosh, like there's something in here that's more important than work.
Yeah.
I need to like to change things. And so when you hear that story, I can't remember, I think it was maybe an interview or something like that. But when you hear that story, you're like, oh my goodness, there's so much of that. And Monsters Inc., like you strip away the monsters and all of the fantastical stuff, and you got a story about a guy who is very work focused, and then now a child is introduced, and now trying to figure out like how to juggle that, and then eventually realizing that like a child is like more important than anything else.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that when I hear that story, it gives me goosebumps, because it's like it's so beautiful to see like that story be brought into a movie, and so you can definitely see like the heart behind it. That's my takeaway, is like there are things that are more important than work and career, and if you're willing to like welcome that. And yeah, what about you, man? What's your takeaway?
Yeah, so this viewing was a refreshing reminder of like why this has gone down in history as like the most memorable, or I should say one of the most memorable and iconic Pixar films. It's easily one of the most inventive worlds, populated with the most charming characters. I've seen this movie so many times as a kid that every moment of this it's just dripping with nostalgia. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to give it a fair verdict, since the things that I might view more critically as an adult are shrouded in like just the pure joy that this movie triggers.
Yeah.
So
it's
so like
nostalgic.
That being said, there was a message on this movie that I think is interesting that I never really picked up on as a kid, or at least never explicitly latched onto. But the one message I never quite grasped was that the idea of inherited bias is really a theme in this movie. People say all the time that people aren't born with prejudice. That's something that's learned through, your cultural experiences, like whether that be your parents, your school, your church, whatever, like you're raised in, like you're surrounded with voices, and that can be the thing to create that prejudice within you. And so in this movie, we see a society built on prejudice, but it's only when a person who is used to being feared encounters someone who has the literal innocence of a child that he realizes that nobody should be defined by their pre-existing bias. Like basically, he thinks that he's like Sully, I'm referring to Sully, of course, thinks he's defined by the fact that he's scary. And we even see that explored in Monsters University later on. But when he meets this little baby who has like no concept of fear when it comes to him, he sees innocent, like pure innocence. And he's like, wait, this thing isn't scared of me? Wait, so then maybe fear is actually learned. Maybe prejudice is actually something that is not informed by or grounded in truth. And so, like, that was a really powerful takeaway for me this viewing, is just realizing that theme of, like, Sully's character arc really is about breaking down his worldview because he sees somebody that views him through the innocence of a child. So he's like, okay, well, what happens if I use that lens?
Right.
And the lens of a child is not going to have those prejudices and those biases. It's going to see through a lens of truth.
Right.
So I really love that. This movie really does celebrate like the innocence of a child, and that's for me a huge takeaway. So
Yeah, that's so cool. I never made that connection too, that like it is such a good writing. Like from the very beginning when Boo first meets Sully, she's genuinely not afraid at all.
Right.
I didn't even make that connection because I'm just so used to their friendship. But
yeah,
she's just like she's like playing with this tail. Like that like totally is like everything he's learned about kids is like
if you think about it, it's just really powerful. Like her reaction to him means everything to him.
Right. Yeah. And then he realizes that he can see himself differently. He can that's really cool.
Yeah. So it is now time
2 peps. We got 2 peps ready to go.
to share our ratings.
Hey, what's your pizza slices?
Pizza slices. Well, first I'll say this movie ranks number 6 out of all 25 Pixar films.
Oh, nice.
So definitely in the top 10, 100%. I think that this movie has breached the top 5 at different points.
Oh, yeah.
It was, I won't spoil what movie, but within the last couple of years, it got bumped down, sadly. And I think it's still going to remain there at number 6 after this viewing for now. But I gave it 9.5 out of 10. I was so torn. Like 9.5 out of 10 pizza slices. I was so torn because it's like, honestly, this is such a hard movie to give anything less. I almost gave it 8.5. I almost gave it 9. But the more I thought about it, the more the score kept going up. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to stop at 9.5. Just because it really doesn't have a whole lot to it that makes me go, this is less, like there's nothing that I really want to take away from this movie. Like it accomplishes so much. It does so many cool things. It is an absolutely deserving of like the title Pixar masterpiece. So what about you?
Yeah, no, awesome, man. So for me, Monster Inc. is number 4.
Oh, wow.
So it's in my top 5. And yeah, I can't think of anything I would really change in the movie. So it's going to be a 10 out of 10 for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm going to try to use those sparingly as we go through here.
Right.
But so kind of like when you were talking about with Toy Story and how it was just like, that's for me. Yeah. It was just total masterpiece. And it just, so this film I wrote also in my notes, I said, could Monsters Inc. be the first classic Pixar feels movie? And I felt like it's the first movie where there's like, there are Pixar feels moments in like the first 2 Toy Stories and Bug's Life.
Yeah.
But like in this movie, it's like very Pixar. Mm-hmm. And I think it's for the first time. This is like when they really push their storytelling into like deeper levels than that they've gone before.
Yeah.
And so for me, this movie is, I would say, their first masterpiece, in my opinion. I mean, they're all so good, but this first one for me is like in their lineup is I just think was just totally on point. It just set Pixar, on such a good foot going forward from this movie too.
I will say I agree with you in the sense that this was definitely a more noticeably Pixar movie than the last 3.
Yes.
I don't want to put, those movies down like Bug's Life and the first 2 Toy Stories. I don't necessarily think that those movies are worse, but I think that in the grand scheme of things, those movies are good for what they were at the time, but Pixar hadn't become like this immortal revelation of a studio until Monsters Inc. started a absolute like stream of just masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece, where it's like undisputable what they're doing is groundbreaking, not just with animation, but with storytelling, with like world building, with characters, with like everything is just visually, memorably, musically, it's all there. So thematically, yeah. So I agree with you. But yeah, I would, yeah. I don't want to give every movie 10 out of 10.
I know. It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
I'll have to pull back, but yeah.
So that's awesome. So now, Ben, do you hear that?
Oh, is that the Pizza Planet truck?
I think, yeah, that's the Pizza Planet truck. It's on the move. Did you catch it?
I did catch it. I caught it in the scene where we kind of glossed over it, but it's when Randall gets what's coming to him, and Sully takes Randall and chucks him in a door into this like southern kind of trailer park kind of vibe. And we see it's at night, and there's this trailer park, and there's a couple, and then they're hitting Randall with like a pan or something. And then to the left of that, we see the Pizza Planet truck chilling right there.
Yeah. So honestly, I'm surprised you didn't bring this up. This is confirmed to be the trailer from Bug's Life, where Bug City or whatever it's called is underneath this trailer. And so the interesting tie-in there is that we now know that the trailer that Bug City is under is lived in by a Pizza Planet delivery person.
Oh, wow.
So
actually under the, like totally under the truck, or just around somewhere near the...
No, it's under the trailer.
Not the truck, sorry. It's under...
Isn't it? It's been a while since I've watched Bug's Life. I don't even know if that's the name of the city. I thought it was like Bug City or something like that. I don't honestly know.
It's in that area for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Bug's Life tie-in, Pizza Planet tie-in. Also, way back towards the beginning of the movie, Sully, when he first goes into Boo's room, we get our first glimpse of the Luxo ball. It's not lit very well, so you may not catch it in that scene. But if you miss it, it does show up again in her room during the goodbye scene. So we see the Luxo ball, and we see two other toys. Did you...
Yes, I caught them. So we see Nemo.
Which is the tease for the next Pixar film.
Yep.
So now this is a tradition Ben and I have talked about in a previous episode, where Toy Story did not have a tease for Bug's Life because they didn't start developing that until later. But in this case, they had already started working on Nemo, so they were able to tease Nemo in Monsters, Inc.
Yeah,
even though it was a full 2 years away.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Well, year and a half, actually, I think.
Okay.
But...
Yep, and then we see the Jessie doll from Toy Story.
Yep.
Yep, and then we see a Deluxo ball, even clear.
Yep.
And was there anything else?
I think that was it. Those are really the only Easter eggs that I caught. So
yeah, heck yeah.
Well, that was Monsters, Inc., guys.
Yeah. If you made it all the way through here, we thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, and start following us on social media and engaging, because we'd love to have like conversations. We'd love to have people, point out things that we miss. We'd love to have people, ask us questions if there's something that pertains to an upcoming episode. Maybe we'll eventually start responding to stuff on the podcast. I don't know.
Yeah, we're getting ready to break in on YouTube, so that'll be a great place to chat with y'all in the comment section. We have our Instagram, which is a great place to chat as well. And yeah, we're gonna explore other ideas too in the future of how we can dialogue more with y'all too.
Yep. But yeah, follow us on Instagram at Pizza Planet Podcast, and we're also on Facebook.
Yes, check us out. So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Monsters, Inc. If somehow you haven't seen it, or even if you have, go check it out. It's on Disney Plus. It's so good.
It's amazing. With that being said, for onward.
To infinity and beyond.
Pizza out.
Hey.